We went down to the pier, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's
At the Gay
really
Is it
cool.
the Gay Water down there?
They
Yeah,
down there
down
on the
there.
water, yeah. It's really cool.
Yeah, it is.
I didn't realize they had such a cool scene like down on the water.
Well, it's a problem now.
Yeah,
Not too many complaints.
and everything's small and you can get everywhere. And
How are you?
traffic's not great, but
Welcome to the Lawrenceburg Redevelopment Commission meeting for December the 12th, 2022, 4:30 p.m. in council chambers. Before we begin, we'll read the public meeting voluntary Title VI public involvement survey. As recipient of federal funds and in support of Lawrenceburg's efforts to ensure non-discrimination and equal access to all citizens, the city gathers statistical data regarding participants in city activities. Therefore, we have provided a voluntary Title VI public involvement survey at this meeting. You're not required to complete this survey. The form is anonymous and will be used solely for the purpose of monitoring our compliance with Title VI and ADA. That form is in the back of the room behind the Christmas tree, which might be hard for an ADA person to actually get to. But we can fix that later, I guess. All right. We will go ahead, and Ms. Hermich, can you give us a roll call vote?
Yes, Executive Director Brian Messmore.
Present.
President Richard Richardson.
Present?
Vice President Lenny Fryman.
Here?
Secretary Kevin Schaefer.
Present.
Member Janie Wilson.
Here.
Member Brian Johnson.
Present.
School Board Member Brian Jansen is absent. And City Attorney Del Walden.
here.
Thank you. If we've had time to review the previous meeting minutes, I'll take a motion to approve those.
So move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Do we have any announcements this evening?
Yeah, we do. I just want to remind the board of our special meeting. Not sure what the
20th,
20th at 4, same time, same place?
4:30.
4:30.
4:30.
20th.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's the confirmatory for the EDA process.
All right.
And just a general announcement to remind Lenny to turn his phone on vibrate.
Actually, sir, I don't have it today. I left it in my office.
That's the only way it wasn't going to ring in here, is if you put it in there. Ms. Hermich, could you provide us with our financial report this evening?
Yes, as of December 6th, 2022, the balance for redevelopment is $1,773,641.53. And after monies committed to projects, it's $1,553,894.43.
Thank you. Do we have any questions with that? If not, we will move on to new business. And Mr. Messmore informed me that we want to move the TIF impact presentation up to the beginning. So we'll have Matt Frishy.
Certainly, if there are no objections, then we can get him on the road back. He's got to travel a little bit.
Well, I kind of object. I think he needs to stay around with us. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good, man. How are you?
Lenny,
Oh,
Lenny,
hi there.
we'll get him out of here 15 minutes sooner.
Janie.
That'll save us a quarter an hour billing.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Coming out of your check, Brian, I don't care.
Sir?
Actually,
You guys want one? I have 2 more. Well, actually, 3 more. Dang, I thought I was perfect. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. As mentioned, my name is Matt Frishy. I'm from Reedy Financial Group. I'm here tonight on behalf of Lawrenceburg RDC to satisfy your guys' final reporting requirement of the year, which would be the annual TIF impact presentation. We have sent out notices and invites to all the overlapping units, inviting them to this meeting to attend as well. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and get into the presentation. On page 2, you'll see just a quick reference of exactly what I was referring to earlier. We've completed all necessary reporting requirements for this year, for the year 2022, except for this final one that will complete the last one, which is prior to December 31st. We have to invite all overlapping taxing units to attend our RDC meeting and present our TIF impact, or what impact our TIF has on these overlapping units. So includes some of the information listed there in the subpoint, such as financial data, long-term plans, and just, like I said, the meat of this presentation will be the actual TIF impact to these overlapping units. So if you flip the page, you'll see the Lawrenceburg Downtown Entertainment District is the only allocation area currently established. I know we're in the process of completing another establishment of a new area. So next year when we complete this reporting requirement, you'll see a separate allocation area listed underneath that. You'll see the creation year and expiration year based on when debt was issued. So our current Lawrenceburg Downtown Entertainment District is set to expire in 2044 based on the issuance of debt in 2019. The new area, once we establish it, will not start that 25-year clock until we have debt issued that is payable by those revenues. So technically, once we establish it, it will be set for, no expiration going on in perpetuity until that is payable by those revenues. And you also see the pay 2022 incremental assessed value of just over $13 million. The next page is just a quick refresher of exactly how TIF works. It's always good to just kind of get a little bit of a refresher on exactly what goes into TIF and make sure that we're talking about all of the assessed values that we've harbored within this allocation area is work that's directly attributable to the efforts of this board and kind of our efforts as far as incentivizing development and utilizing TIF in the right way. Base AV will always go to those overlapping taxing units at the time of establishment. So we're not taking any dollars from those overlapping units. It's a big thing to keep in mind. And you'll see yep, go ahead.
Since we're talking about the overlapping, the taxing entities.
Yes.
You're talking about expanding the TIF.
Yep.
So what about some of these existing areas that have already been, let's just say, they're not in the TIF yet, but they're being added to the TIF, the new TIF area. The reason for TIF is to get the ground shovel ready for the new businesses what we're bringing in. But how does that affect, just one specifically? I'm going to point out is the Tri-State Liquid Waste over there on 50 across Caddy Corner from Skyline. That is going to be in the new TIF district, right?
Okay.
That's correct.
Yep.
Correct?
Yes.
So by establishing the TIF district, are you able to add stuff that's already been renovated and developed as long as it hasn't been assessed?
It goes back to January 1 of 2022.
So whenever the declaratory resolution is passed, any parcels being added to an allocation area will receive a base assessment date of the prior January 1. So, if we were to spill over into next year and we were to do our declaratory resolution February 1st or even January 3rd, we'd only get the prior January 1, so January 1 of 23. So for in your guys' specific case, your declaratory resolution was passed, I believe, the 14th. It sparks in my memory. So we'll get January 1 of 2022 as our base assessment date. Any assessment date prior to that date will go to those base overlapping units. Any development that's happened between January 1 and today will be captured in the TIF assessed value.
And it's happened before, correct me if I'm wrong, but hasn't the assessor to the county been behind like several years in the past? And as far as some of the reassessments go? So it doesn't have anything to do when they reassess it? Like say a property like the Tri-State Liquid Waste.
If they hadn't assessed it in multiple years, you're saying, and then it was added in, they had done a bunch of stuff prior to, that's just a factor of the assessor, right? That's nothing that we can't control when the assessor goes out and assesses a specific parcel.
So like an example would be Bob Evans. I think that was probably 3 or 4 years behind as far as tax assessments go. So I believe that some of the taxing entities lost out on some of that money.
Potentially, and I guess
The way the assessment rolled.
yeah, and I guess my comment to that would be Indiana is historically underassessed, right? We're supposed to be a market value state. We are far, far from it. The amount of discrepancy between county to county assessors that they have. Some assessors will assess buildings at 100% of investment. Others will do 50%. You guys are more so in the 50% group, especially with the casino, the way it's valued right now. It should, or the event center, excuse me, should be assessed a lot higher than what it is right now. And that's the main driver of your guys' TIF assessed value. So if the assessor actually, were to assess that building closer to what it actually would, market value of that assessment or that property, your guys' assessed value would be a lot higher within the TIF. So.
And Dell, I think I'm correct in stating this, they were able to appeal to the property tax board and get a COVID-related waiver or reduction in their
Significant.
Yes, very significant for that year, and that year alone. So that should bounce back.
Yeah, and what happens, Brian, is that when, the way it works over at the county is when you get a building permit to open your business, that permit also goes up to the assessor's office. That's how they know to reassess property that's been improved. Because what we're talking about is the incremental added value, not the total AV, but the incremental AV from the property as it existed. Like, think about the property where Four Speed on 50 is going to be. When they go to get their certificate of occupancy at the county, then it goes upstairs to the assessor. Assessor knows to go down there and reassess it. That's how it happens, contiguous to the improvement. Now, probably sometimes slips through the cracks, but it's our job to follow up on it, make sure that they are doing what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, like I said, the reason I'm asking is because I thought the whole point of the TIF was to get ground shovel ready and not to add stuff that's already been included in, they've already upgraded it and, they're got their certificate of occupancy and everything. But I just didn't know how if you could legally add that to the TIF if it's already been redeveloped.
Technically, you can add a parcel to any TIF at any point in time. It once again just depends on the base assessment date and what's going to go to the base versus what's going to go to increment.
Well, I think what you're saying is, Brian, is that now it's different when we're just starting out. Imagine Greendale. They've had a robust TIF for many decades, and we never have. Lawrenceburg's had a basic TIF, but not in the same way that Greendale has. So you're right that it is to get things shovel ready, but the current shovel ready project in Greendale, let's say Mike's Car Wash, funds from last year's project are being used for that one, and then funds from that project will be used for the next one. It looks a little different from us because we're just starting out, but now that next project will be funded by the current project, and then so on and so on.
I've got a lot of questions about it. That's why I'm asking questions.
Yeah, of
And I
course.
also would like to ask too, I know a lot of the folks and, the taxpayers in the city and a lot of people don't really understand how TIF works.
Mm-hmm.
And I know not everybody comes to public meetings and they don't really quite understand and grasp it. But, would it be advantageous for us to maybe have a workshop one weekend, like on a Saturday, to come in and give a presentation? Do you think we'll get more people that show up to the meetings? We'll try to understand TIF a little bit, understand how it works and why it.
In my opinion, if I felt there was demand to do that, I'd be more than happy to do it 10 times. I haven't experienced any demand of that nature.
And if there are citizens that want more information, kind of want to know how TIF works, I would urge them to reach out to Brian. Brian always is in contact with me. We have several presentations on our website, and I know I've shared several with you guys. I know we did a TIF 101 workshop earlier this year, I believe even, or maybe it was last year. But anyways, we have resources available for education that we'll be happy to provide to any citizen that wants.
They are on your
just
website. We can pull. I can
freely available on our website. You can go to it.
read up on it.
Did they record that video when they did the TIF 101 presentation? Was it a video that they recorded? Or do you have anything that's like?
I believe we did record it.
I'm sure it is.
I believe we did.
Can you make a note so we can dig around in old AIM? Yeah.
Well, it was here.
We've done them here.
We didn't record
Okay.
We've done one.
The AIM one would be all the
We did one
slides.
like
and
that
everything.
too.
Yeah.
A while back.
Yeah. I know there's video access somewhere to those. So.
Or maybe even just like put something on the website, like a link to understanding TIF under the redevelopment page or something. I don't know.
Yeah, we could.
I get a lot of questions on it, from both sides.
Yeah.
From taxpayers and then also from people that are part of the school corp.
Yeah, it's a complex topic, and if you're not in it every day, it can be very confusing for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem.
Where were we?
So I think I had finished up on the how TIF works kind of slide, just that kind of refresher of exactly how and what goes into TIF. If we want to flip the next page, the financial position of the actual allocation area, including the beginning of year fund balance, the revenues that were projected to be received, and I say projected because we're still waiting our second distribution of the year. Our expected expenditures out of that allocation area fund, and then our year-end balance. Right now, our main focus of that area has been paying the debt that we had issued, payable by those revenues. So as far as long-term plans, I know we're looking to establish this new area. We'll have a lot more, as Dale mentioned, projects here in the future that we'll be looking at funding through those specific revenues. So the next 3 pages are really going to be where this presentation holds a lot of the TIF impact information. And this next slide, I'm not going to read through it word for word. You can read through it word for word and the next couple, but I'm just going to kind of conceptualize what it is we're actually showing you and doing within this analysis. Basically, in order to correctly quantify what a TIF impact would be to overlapping units, we've developed a model that we've used through a study that we did back in 2018, kind of looking at every single parcel in 3 different counties from a high, medium, and low circuit breaker environment perspective, because the level of TIF impact you have on overlapping units is directly correlated to the amount of circuit breaker your community experiences. A high circuit breaker environment will have more impact on their community, as opposed to a low circuit breaker impact will have a much less impact on their community. So all that to say, what we do is we look at your guys' TIF allocation area, which, as we said in a previous slide, has roughly just over 13 million in assessed value. What we do is we say, hypothetically, tomorrow, if we were to get rid of our TIF area, what would that 13 million in assessed value do to property tax collections, to all of these overlapping units, if we were to just release it into the base? What would happen? And basically, through our study and through looking at every single parcel throughout each one of those varying circuit breaker counties, we determined that there's a margin of revenue that is generated by using TIF that would not otherwise be there if not using TIF. A lot of that goes into the circuit breaker law, unique to Indiana. As you guys know, certain property types cannot pay more than their circuit breaker cap. Residents can't pay more than 1% of their assessed value. 2% ag land can't pay more than 2%. Commercial can't pay more than 3%. So that constrains the amount of property taxes that an individual or company can pay, regardless of what the tax rate is. So that's one thing that goes into this study. The other thing that goes into this study is the fact that units of local government can only grow the revenues year over year mainly through their max levy funds and through the state-approved growth quotient, which the state gives out each year. So from this year to next year, the state says you guys can grow your max levy funds by 5%. That's all. Can't go any more. So it's a pretty basic equation. Our assessed value has a completely opposite relationship with our tax rate. So if our assessed value goes up, our tax rate goes down. Our levy can only go up by 5% or whatever the state tells us that it can go up by. So if we were to release 13 million in assessed value, Lawrenceburg can still only grow their max levy by 5%, right? We release 13 million into that AV number, all that happens is our tax rate would go down minimally, okay? So that's why what a lot of the numbers that I'm about to show you are not revenue dollar collections that units are going to receive. More so, it's less circuit breaker that they will receive. So if we flip to the next page, and we can kind of get to the nuts and bolts of this hypothetical scenario here. So, for instance, Lawrenceburg Civil City, like I said, they can't grow their revenues, their max levy revenues, by more than 5%, right? If we release all this assessed value, all that would happen is they would receive $101,029 less in circuit breaker, all right? And just hypothetically, I think the scenario we went over earlier was a good one. You know, a $100,000 home, right? They pay $1,000, 1%. That's $1,000 is their cap. Your guys' current property tax rate is just over three and change, right? So that means that technically that property owner of a $100,000 home would be paying $3,000, let's say, roughly $3,000 for their property tax bill. They're capped at 1% though. So that's $2,000. So they pay $1,000, they should be paying $3,000. That's $2,000 then that that the overlapping units all split, and that's their circuit breaker for that one property, right? And it's split based on their portion of property tax rate. So if Lawrenceburg, for instance, makes up 60% of the property tax rate, they'll get 60% of that $2,000 circuit breaker impact, okay? If we release a bunch of AV, and all that does, once again, is reduce our rate, rather than, let's just, hypothetically here, let's just say that our rate went from 3 to 2, right? Now that property should be paying $2,000. They're still only capped at 1%. So that, instead of a $2,000 loss split amongst the units, now we have a $1,000 loss split amongst the units. So less circuit breaker. That is the impact here. It's not more dollars that these units would be receiving that we're taking from them. It's just less circuit breaker that they would be receiving. Okay? So you can see we have listed out, I'm not going to read through every single one of the numbers here. You see we have it broken out by overlapping units that are affected, their dollar circuit breaker impact, the percentage of the total impact to all the units. And then also it's important to include the green section, which is each one of those units' budget and the percent of that impact to their budget. Because, you know, if I tell you that the school's impact is $49,382, what does that mean, right? In relation to their actual budget, what does it mean? $49,000 to Joe Smith can be a lot of money, right? As compared to their just above $12 million budget, it's less than 0.5% of their budget. So their impact is very minimal on that unit. If you look at all of those circuit breaker impact numbers and you add them all up, the total impact to all overlapping units would be $167,743. And that's that first kind of bluish box, right? Alternatively, because you guys are using TIF and you have a TIF allocation established, in 2022, we're going to collect just under $400,000, okay? So if we look at the difference between those two numbers, there's $227,000 and $253,000 that would not exist if we didn't have this allocation area. Because once again, those units can't grow their revenues by 10%, 7%. They're capped at that 5% and the amount of circuit breaker that we're experiencing, right? So what we kind of coined this as, this margin of revenue that we identified, we kind of called it TIF margin. It's a margin of revenue that's there because we're using TIF. So, you know, your guys' TIF margin, we say, is 58 cents. And what does that 58 cents mean? If you turn the next page, basically that 50 cents means for every single dollar that the RDC collects, 58 cents of it is an amount of revenue that is there because you guys are using TIF. That revenue would not be there if we were to release this assessed value. No one would collect that 58 cents. So overall, you guys have a very good circuit breaker environment and very minimal TIF impact through these overlapping units, because not only are you're only keeping their circuit breaker a little bit higher, but you're also looking to utilize these revenues to benefit those overlapping units through redevelopment in the city, and that benefits the township, the county, the school corporation. All these overlapping units benefit from all your guys' efforts to revitalize the city and bring more assessed value into the city and the community itself. So that's the gist of it. Like I said, I know it's a complex topic. A lot goes into it. But if you guys do have any questions, I'm here to answer any. And once again, I can share any informative presentations or information that we have available to you or any of the citizens.
Question though regarding is when you send out the impact
Yes.
charts with the maps and stuff.
Yep.
If you could include color versus black and white.
Okay.
So the taxing entity didn't have to go to the clerk treasurer's office to review the map.
Okay. Yep.
That's one of the complaints I heard.
Very well.
Anybody have any additional questions for Matt? Well, if not, we appreciate you coming down here. Thank you very
My
much.
pleasure.
Presentation.
Anytime. I will see you guys at the special meeting on Tuesday.
All right, see you then, Matt.
right,
Have a safe trip home.
Be safe. Thanks, guys. Taking off the back roads, take the fast road. I'm taking the fast road, don't worry.
We'll see you.
See you guys.
Next on the agenda, we have got the SCI Ready Sub-Recipient Grant Agreement.
Okay, this is regarding the Liberty Theater. We were, awarded a $600,000 grant through the Ready, which is fantastic for the project over there. And this is their standard, subrecipient grant agreement. Council's looked at it. It's basically the same one they send to all the grant recipients all over the state. And what we've been asked to do is ask the Redevelopment Commission to have a motion to approve and or accept this agreement. And once that's done, we will continue the process of getting those funds made available to the renovation of the Liberty Theater. Dale, did I cover everything on there?
Perfectly.
Perfectly?
Perfectly.
Imagine that.
Could you repeat that?
It's on video.
In the minute.
Do we have any questions regarding the SCI Ready Grant? If not, take a motion to approve the grant.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Hey, Mr. Messmore, so we've got project updates.
Yeah, I'll just briefly cover a couple, and while we were talking about the Liberty, I'll just hit that one real quick. We are moving through the design development phase. So we've had the architectural renderings of the inside, and we're now turning those into mechanical drawings, construction drawings, you know, just taking that level of detail and getting it into the next level. We'd hope to have construction drawings. I'm going to say March. So it's going. We do have an abatement, an asbestos abatement scheduled for, not scheduled yet, but our intention is to get them in there second week of January. As I understand it, it's about a 6-week process, so that's going to slow down my structural drawings a little bit. They've been in there, they've done an assessment, you know, prior, they were in there with Dan when he was making his original assessment on the property, but they're not prepared to, you know, release construction drawings without getting another visit in there, so they're going to do what they can, but they are definitely going to have to get back in there at the tail end of that abatement. So that's moving along. Union Hall, we were provided the as-built, so now we're working on the survey and split, Lenny, and consolidation for that particular property. Tax credit housing, I did remind everyone that that award is not in November any longer. It will be January. We've already talked about the EDA. It goes to council on Monday and back to us on the 20th for the declaratory meeting. Maple Street, you know, I think I've touched on this before, but we will have bid documents for the remediation of the contaminated soils over there in January. Hopefully for a construction start on that remediation in April. And I would just reference the fact that being able to utilize the Brownfield grant has greatly aided us in getting to this point, because prior to this, we would do an assessment and it would indicate we need another one, and it would indicate Richard would come there, we did another one, and we would kind of get a little hesitant to pull the trigger to do another assessment that didn't get us to the end of where we were going. So, in a roundabout way, that's my description, but bid documents in January for that 600-ton removal, and then, of course, we'll fill it back in. And that property would then be available for redevelopment. So, I think that's all I was going to touch on tonight, unless there are any questions on the top of anybody's mind.
The buildings by the bowling alley for the adult,
The tax credit?
yeah. What, have we heard
We have our
back?
application in, we were gonna hit it here, they were supposed to be doing it in November, but they had to move it back to January.
Oh,
They had, because of it, when these applications were submitted, the economic conditions, the tax rates and all was significantly different than today. So they thought it was wise to have everybody redo their calculations and resubmit. So that was the purpose for the day, and probably rightly so. I will remind everybody, since you brought that up, that our fallback plan is the 4% tax credit program, which would require us to fill a significant gap in order to keep and maintain our 10% contribution to the project. So we do have a backup plan to the 9% tax credit. If we have to execute it, it will be solely dependent on the ability to cover that gap between the 4 and the 9% tax credit program to keep our contribution at 10%-ish.
All right.
How's that?
Thank you, Brian.
No, thank you. This is good. I appreciate you guys staying informed and moving the city forward.
All right, next on the agenda, we have Mr. Messmore again with the Looking Up Pilot Grant Program. Everybody should have received this in their packet. Simple, 2 pages. It's $25,000 matching grant to fix an upstairs portion of a building in a defined area within downtown Lawrenceburg.
That's correct. And the first sentence in the application that we put together, thank you Main Street and Michelle, the program is designed to activate unfinished, unoccupied upper floors of buildings. And we do have this is a pilot. It's Walnut, High Street from Vine to Elm. So we're targeting specific areas to pilot this program, and the other it's a dollar for dollar match, $25,000 up to $25,000. There's only 2 available, and the payment is upon completion. Certificate of occupancy, proof of all expenditures, and since it might take a little bit of time to actually rent the space or occupy the space, we've set that parameter as actually publicly advertised that space for availability.
We're not doing owner occupied. We're allowing landlords to participate.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Seems like it'd be nicer to incentivize people who are actually gonna live down here instead of
That's what it is. That's
speculating.
the point of this program is to activate and occupy 2nd, 3rd, 4th floors.
But you can get like XYZ real estate company and they buy up property and make apartments. Wouldn't that, I mean, they'd be eligible just like,
If they bought a building
My mom wanted to
that
move.
if they bought a building that had a unoccupied, unactive 2nd floor and wanted to put apartments in it, then they would, I would at this point believe they would qualify.
but I just know we wanted to show preference to owner occupied.
At this point, well, they would be rentals either way.
Well, I mean, if I, like, not me obviously, but someone who lived in Billsboro said, man, I'm gonna buy a building down here and I'm gonna fix up the 2nd floor so I can live in it, that would be owner occupied. But if someone in Cincinnati said, I'm gonna buy a building and just make an apartment, then, you know, that could be a distinction we put in the grant, or we could say either one, both those people are treated the same. I mean, I think there's value in getting a rental unit for sure, but is there a little bit more value if they actually are gonna live it in themselves? Maybe they get extra bonus point in consideration, since there's only two, might be competitive.
Right. Understood. So everybody recalls those basic parameters in the program. I'm just gonna reference an article, that came from Main Street America, and it, you know, just to let us all know that, you know, this is in main streets, you know, main streets, cities like ours all over the country, programs like these are being discovered, and there's new demand for them. In this particular article, in recent years, housing has taken forefront in Main Street communities. The demand for downtown housing units, especially unique upper floor units, have been more sought after, and it even noted that generally units where people have to sleep there's more requirements in terms of expenses and those sorts of things. So just pointing out that you know, it's a pilot program. I'm confident in the design team to evaluate the applications to the fullest, and noting that we're doing things that are consistent in other main streets across America. And it's no new money from our current grant programs that we oversee and fund. It's the same amount of money, gross money, just divided a little differently.
Does anybody have questions regarding this? Or comments? Would anyone like to make a motion to move forward with the Looking Up Pilot Grant Program?
I'll make a motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Messmore.
All right. Okay. Where we at?
Property transfer
I'll
resolution.
put this in a box, just to get everybody up to date on this. This has been an ongoing thing. It kind of come to a fairly quick conclusion, but several months ago, 70 East High had an offset piece of property behind the structure. The framery property actually went over about 2.5 feet behind 70 East High. So it kind of prohibited the use of the property directly behind that space. So council voted because they owned that property, to transfer that, to obtain that property, survey it, split it, and go through the process of transferring the property to the new owners of 70 East High, who stated they, were going to open up a retail shop in that location. So in order to dispose of that property, it comes to us, and we are the body that would approve the disbursement of that property. Is that correct, Mr. Weldon?
Yeah.
Okay, so everybody with me at this far? It's just been a process to get to this point. So now we have what we have, to satisfy, our goals. We've created an economic development agreement, which basically says we're transferring that property, and we've been discussing what, as we always do, what protections are in it from the city, how do we cover us and what we have in this thing. So everything else is just describing what we're doing to get to this point. But the owner agrees that they will open a commercial and or retail business that is open to the public on the ground level of 70 East High, and keep that same business open for 3 years following the date. Whereas in the event of this breach of this agreement, owners agree to immediately repay to the city and redevelopment all costs associated with the transfer of the parcel. So we're transferring it. The clawback is if they violate that 3-year term, then they would repay the cost to the city So that's where we're at. That's what I'm asking for approval to proceed.
Does anybody have any questions about, oh, yes.
So-
Mr. Johnson.
I remember when we did this back for like Funny Farm Coffee.
Yeah.
And we had kind of put some wording in there, some stipulation on how long they're gonna be open, like what kind of business hours are they gonna have. I don't notice that in here. I mean, they could theoretically be open one day a week.
Right, and I agree, and we've discussed, how much and to put into it. I mean, we've moved fairly quickly on this. Their participation, it wasn't a negotiated economic development agreement like we would typically do and discuss all those parameters going in, the property transfer, agreement. The council was kind of the decision that they needed to move forward. So we really didn't get into that upfront negotiation like we typically did. So we were just trying to get to a point where all parties could agree that there's enough in here to satisfy the arrangement.
Brian, for,
Do we
Yeah.
know what the business is they're gonna
It's,
put?
it's boutiques and crafts.
Brian, for perspective, how much would that clawback be? Is it a couple $1,000?
$1,000,
Less than 5?
less than
So that may be part of the reason for less stipulation as well, and that the cost is not $25,000.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, yeah, I mean,
Okay.
they have invested significantly in the community and continue to invest. They have, that's correct, yeah. Dale,
Yes,
did I do another excellent job on that?
I mean, that was okay.
Praise is going down.
No.
Can't all be singers.
Yeah.
No, that's right, and so we're gonna do a joint resolution with council, and then, cause council of the city owns it, and believe it or not, it's very difficult to give property to someone, you know, in kind of a non-traditional way like this. It's harder when it's smaller. Projects are harder when they're smaller. But this accomplishes that goal, and what it'll end up being, net result is that city basically gives it to redevelopment gives it to the family property owners, and then there's an economic development agreement attached to it, so they're not just getting something for nothing, and they've got a stake in it, and they're improving the community and the downtown, and they have a clawback, so it checks all the boxes.
So essentially, what we need to do here is vote on the joint resolution between the City of Lawrenceburg and Lawrenceburg Redevelopment Commission authorizing the transfer of real property, which will be our resolution number
3.
number 3. And if we've had time to review that and we are in favor of it, I would accept a motion to move forward with the joint resolution, Resolution 2022-3 of the Redevelopment Commission.
So move.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Have a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion does carry. Now that we have that approved, the Economic Development Agreement will be next. And if we've had time to review that and had our questions answered, I'll take a motion to approve the Economic Development Agreement.
So move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
And we have a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion does carry. And I don't see anything else under our new business for this evening. Under old business, we've got our Main Street report. That was also provided to us in the packets that were sent out. Does anybody have any questions about that? If not, if we have had a chance to review the claims provided to us, I would accept a motion to approve those.
So move.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion does carry.
Hey, Richard.
Yes.
If you have a copy of that resolution, do you mind starting to pass it so everyone can at least sign off on it?
I've got a copy of the joint resolution, but I don't have any, well, wait a minute. I sure do.
Okay.
Yes,
yeah,
I
if
do.
you don't mind signing it.
Had to
and
flip it
before
back one.
everybody leaves, if everyone could sign it.
There that is. All right. Do we have any comments from the audience this evening? If not, I would accept a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
I'll like that part.
You got your original?
Oh.
You missed your
You ain't
opportunity.
babysitting tonight? You told me to be quiet.